So we're going to be using a matrix and row operations to solve this system of equations. So the first thing to do is write this as an augmented matrix, it's called. So we write down all of the numerical information without the x's and the y's and z's. So the first row would look like 2, -1, 3, and 17. The second equation is represented with 1, 5, -4, and -19. And the bottom row is -1, 3, -1, and -9. Sometimes people put a line here to separate that this comes from the coefficients of x, y, and z, and here are the constants. You don't really need to put it, but if you see it, that's what it means. So this column represents the x information, this is the y, and this is the z. And the goal is to get as many ones and zeros in here as possible. In fact, what we're going to do is get this diagonal right here to be ones, and everything else will be zeros. So if this row were to say 1, 0, 0, then what that means is you would have 1 x, 0 y's, and 0 z's, and that 1 x would then equal this number over here. So that would be the solution. In order to get that, we basically use the elimination method from intermediate algebra. But we're going to do it with matrices rather than algebra. So, for example, if I take this -1 and add it to that, I can get a 0. But if I'm going to do that, I have to do it with the whole row. So I'm going to take row number 3 and add it to row number 2. And I even keep track of my work like this. Say, take row number 3 and add it to row number 2. Now, that's only going to change row number 2. Row number 1 will stay the same. In fact, row number 3 will stay the same. We're only using the numbers from row number 3 to change row number 2. So when you add this to that, we get a 0. Add these two, it's an 8. A -1 added to -4 is -5. And then a -9 and -19 is -28. Likewise, I can use the -1 to eliminate the 2 if I were to first multiply this by 2. So the next step is going to be take a 2 times row number 3 and add that onto row number 1. So the second row is going to stay the same. The third row stays the same. It's only the row that I'm adding onto that gets changed. So 2 times this is going to be -2, which is going to cancel that 2. A 2 times this is going to be 6. Added to that makes 5. And then a 2 times that will be -2 with the 3 makes +1. And then a 2 times that is -18 with a +17 is a -1. And now that we have these zeros in here, don't do anything to change those. For example, you might say, well, now I'm going to take this -1 and get it to cancel that. But if you do, the -1 also has to be added up there, and that'll just ruin the work that we just did to get this to be a 0. So instead, go the other way around. Take this one and add it down here to get this one to become a 0. So next is going to be take row number 3 and add row number 1 and add it down to row number 3. So this one is not going to change, and this one's not going to change. make sure you copy the numbers carefully as you go from one step to the next, because it's very frustrating to go through this process and at the end you realize that you accidentally wrote down a 38 instead of a 28. Okay, so this gets added to that, it doesn't change the -1. And then a 5 added to 3 is an 8. And then this added down here is a 0. And a -1 added to a -9 is -10. And now I can use this 1 again to eliminate this 5. So I'm going to have to multiply by 5 in order to get a positive 5 and get it to cancel. So for row number 1, multiply by 5, and then add that on to row number 2. So changing only row number 2. Okay, so the 0 is not going to change the 0. But now we've got 5 times this, which is 25, added to 8 is 33. And then this will be a 5, which cancels that. I've got 0. And then a 5 times this is -5 with -28 is -33. So this one is the y information, which if I divide by 33 is then going to say one y value is equal to -3. So in fact that's the next step, divide through by 33, or multiply by 1/33 to row number 2. Alright, so divide through by 33, it's going to be 0, 1, 0, -1. And now, let's see, I can use this 1. Now that I have zeros on either side, I can use this 1 to eliminate the 5, and I can use it to eliminate the 8. And you can even do 2 steps at once. So you can say take -5 times row 2 and add it up onto row 1. Then I'm also going to take a -8 times row 2 and add it down to row 3. So the middle row will stay the same. And then let's see, so the 0 is not going to change that, and the 0 is not going to change that. Then multiply with a -5 and add it to this, it's going to cancel it. Multiply this by a -5, which is going to be +5, add it to that, it's a 4. So that's the z value. It's saying the first 2 values are gone, but the third value, which is z, is equal to 4. And then a -8 times this is going to cancel that. So we have -1 stays the same, because 0 added to it's not going to change it. Then -8 and +8, those get canceled, so that's 0. This one doesn't change, 0 won't change to 0. And then multiply this by -8 will become a +8. Add that to this, and it's -2. And so the last thing to do is get rid of this negative, as well as this is the x information, so that really should go first. So I'm going to, for one thing, multiply a -1 times row 3, so that this is a positive. And then this is the y information, so that should be in the middle. This is the z information, so that should be on the bottom, and this should be on the top. So another thing you can do is switch rows. So just put a little arrow like this saying I'm going to switch rows 1 and 3. So this one, which is positive 1, 0, 0, 2, is switched to the top row. The middle row, which is the y information, stays where it is. And then the bottom one is 0, 0, 1, 4. And so then we've got that x is equal to 2, y is equal to negative 1, and z is equal to 4. And then I'd like to quickly check my answer. So go to Matrix, go over to Edit, and I've already got the information typed in, so it's 3 by 4 system of equations. There's the 17, negative 19, negative 9. Then quit, and go back into Matrix, and under Math, there's reduced row echelon form. So in other words, the calculator is going to do the exact same thing that we just did. Maybe not in the same order, but so reduced row echelon form, and then go back in one more time and get the name A. And the reduced row echelon form is, so it did these types of calculations, and it found out that the answer should be 2, negative 1, and 4. So there it is.